You know what convinced me that Prophet Muhammad was a prophet?
What?
The Quran. Because it came through him. That's it. We have more evidence for the existence of Prophet Muhammad than any other historical figure on this planet. Prophet Muhammad goes against Christianity. That is true, of course. He reveals that God was not begotten. Even though I felt the presence of God in my own pilgrimage, in my own journey, I didn't find it within the church, in their doctrine, in their theology. The gospel authors are anonymous, and therefore they've been named Mark, Matthew, and Luke. You don't think that anybody in Palestine is called Mark, Matthew, and Luke, right? So those are made-up names as well. If you want to mimic, if you want to come closer to God, why not follow the example of the prophet?
For 3 years when I was a devout Christian, I had this immense peace that no matter what happened in my life, like God was with me, and I knew I had found something. One thing that stuck out with me when I read it was like the chapter about how when Jesus gets to heaven, God's going to ask, like, did you ever claim to be me? Essentially, he'd be like, I would never claim such a thing. I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. That is pretty bold to say, like, you are literally God in the flesh. I don't intend on necessarily being like an only religious streamer and only talking about that. I want to go, I guess, be a Muslim and live my life, not just talking a bunch of words, but go do things about it.
Very unique that you get this blueprint essentially of how to level up spiritually, knowing that Islam is this war religion and they just want to destroy everything we got. I was very skeptical when it comes down to Muslims. I didn't want to look into this religion because for me it was just violence and it has nothing to do with God. That's how I perceived it. So
Yeah.
I actually
can
hated Islam. I went to the Amazon jungle to drink ayahuasca with the shamans. Right, I did that as well. In Thailand, as you did as well, I spent time with the Buddhist monks. I fasted. Actually, I made it extra hard for myself. I went on a 10-day water fast.
Ooh.
And even the monks asked me, why are you doing that? The truth is not something that you interpret. The truth just is. And therefore, the truth can be only received on an experiential level. I traveled the world and I still feel not connected to God at all. When I was a kid, everything was so easy. I was just laying in my bed, praying to God. That's it. I wasn't doing anything else. I was just praying to God directly. And I felt so connected and I felt that my prayers are heard. And in Orthodox Christianity, it is a bit nationalistic. I kept on traveling until I found one monastery, a Serbian one. Hilandar is the name. And I was so happy, man. And I went in there, and believe it or not, the priest denied me entrance. The priest said, sorry, man, we cannot accept you. You don't have the visa. They look at me and they say, Mother Mary must have brought you here. And I will never forget that because it just, man, it made me cringe. I was just wondering, okay, where is God in the equation? For me, it was clear that this whole spiritual pursuit ultimately needs to lead you to God. Even though I felt the presence of God in my own pilgrimage, in my own journey, I didn't find it within the church, in their doctrine, in their theology. Opened up the Quran, finally, alhamdulillah. And after a few pages already, I realized, okay, this is definitely not what I was looking for, because I was looking for the devil in that book. This was really my premise. I'm going to find the devil. I'm going to debunk the Quran. And Surah Al-Ikhlas, say, He is Allah, one and indivisible, Allah, the sustainer, needed by all. He has never had offspring, nor was he born, and there is no one comparable to him. That is Surah Ikhlas. Right? And for me, honestly, this is how you can sum up Islam. What is spirituality if it is not the pursuit of connecting to God? What we really want is to get as close to God as possible. So only monotheism then makes sense. And once I realized that Islam is the only truly monotheistic faith, it just clicked. I couldn't deny the truth of Islam. And it even went so far that I went back to Macedonia and I went back to the Orthodox Church. And I really wanted to be an Orthodox Christian again. But when I was in the church on the Balkan and the priest, which we had to address as father, even though the Bible says you should call no man father, it was absolutely non-negotiable, essentially, with my conscience, because I got it. And that's what Islam is about. Once you get the message, why not accept it? Tawheed is the uniqueness of God, that he is one, uniquely one, and that there are no partners to be attached to him, right? So Tawhid is the opposite of the Trinity. The fitra is essentially how every child is born. What that means is we don't believe in the original sin like Christians do, that we are those dirty, dirty sinners and we are born with this original sin because Adam and Eve transgressed. Islam declares that every child is born upon the fitra, upon the natural predisposition of being pure, being sin-free. You're a baby. You didn't do anything wrong. Everything is fine. And you understand innately that there is one creator. The fitra knows right from wrong. And the closer you get to the natural state again, the more you see the world as it truly is. I understood that everything is interconnected and that it all comes from one origin. Purely one all-transcendent origin. You know what convinced me that Prophet Muhammad was a prophet?
What?
The Quran. Because it came through him. That's it. The whole city was revolving around this pagan belief. Just as the West nowadays is revolving around democracy and everything that comes with it. But meanwhile, when Abraham was willing to sacrifice his own son for God, they don't blink an eye, right? That's a story about a prophet within Christianity. So he was so convinced of monotheism. He was so convinced, based upon historical writings. We have more evidence for the existence of Prophet Muhammad than any other historical figure on this planet. We have less evidence for the historical Jesus than we have for the historical Prophet Muhammad. The reality is that the Gospels, the earliest manuscripts that we have, are written in Greek. And that makes you think, of course, because Jesus spoke Aramaic. And therefore, we come to the conclusion that there were intellectual Greeks that wrote those Gospels. Based upon, we don't really know, hearsay, over the Gospel authors are anonymous. And therefore, they've been named Mark, Matthew, and Luke. You don't think that anybody in Palestine is called Mark, Matthew, and Luke, right? So those are made-up names as well. They found new Gospels again, right? That date back even further, and they didn't make it into the Bible. The Gospel of Jesus, the Injil in Islam, is something that we believe Jesus came with. However, the Gospel of Mark, Matthew, and Luke are biographies about Jesus. We have that in Islam as well. God simply reveals truth to the messenger. And then people have free will. And what they do with the message is up to the people. It's not that God does it, right? God created us uniquely with this free will, and people will do what people do. You believe in a sky daddy? Yeah, not so funny, actually. Pretty true if you look at Christianity, because they call him the Father. So it is a sky daddy of sorts. Allah itself, the word, is neither masculine, nor is it female, nor can it be made masculine or female.
If you were in a jungle and you had never really communicated with anyone else, you would be able to, which I agree with this, be able to come to the concept of there must be one God, the ultimate oneness of like monotheism.
In Islam, we say that God sent messengers to all the nations anyways. And so therefore, it was always a fair playing ground. You would still come to the fitra, to your own conclusion ultimately, and you would be considered a monotheist in the eyes of God. Prophet Muhammad goes against Christianity. That is true, of course. He reveals that God was not begotten. I mean, for me, it took me 2 years after reading the Quran to accept Islam, roughly. So I was as well spinning my wheels over and over and over and over again until I submitted. When I took my Shahada finally, it was like this huge weight was lifted, because I've been believing this for 2 years straight. I submitted my will. Now it's all done, If you want to mimic, if you want to come closer to God, why not follow the example of the Prophet? You don't have to chew on miswak if you don't want to, right? But it's something that gets you closer to the way of the Prophet.
Yeah.
And with Prophet Muhammad, the circle got closed. That's it. So now we have this Quran for all eternity, if you will, till the end of days. There's nobody higher than anyone in Islam. We're all brothers, and we simply worship one God. That's what Islam is. It's a brotherhood. And therefore, everybody, be it a scholar, be it an imam, everybody has to obey by the Quran and then the Sunnah. There is a codex of conduct that we all agree to, and we're simply pursuing getting better at jiu-jitsu. That's what that is, right? It's a brotherhood, and we all have the same values. We are all on the same mission here, getting closer to that one creator that created us. We can be fence sitters as much as we want to, but there is a battle being fought for the dominant ideology, if you will. There needs to be a counter movement as well of people that share the same belief system. And this is where, quote unquote, organized religion comes into place again. The Quran states that God is free of need and the prayer is for you. It's not that he needs your worship. If you don't worship, nothing will be taken away from God at all. He's perfect. He's complete. It's for you. Veganism destroyed my health. To this very day, I'm still battling with certain health issues because I was vegan for 4 years. Creatine is missing, carnosine is missing, L-carnitine is missing, B12 is missing, B6 is missing, choline, collagen, etc., etc. There's so many nutrients not found in a vegan diet, and it absolutely wrecked my health. I had entities attacking me, dark entities. I had battles with demons. I even saw Baphomet on a trip of mine. I went to an extreme of everything. And I thought that this is how life works. I know what Islam gave me, and I know that it's the biggest gift. It's amazing. The only thing I'm concerned about, yes, egoistical, is how I will stand in front of God. And that's the thing that we should care about, I believe, ultimately.
The truth. They don't want the truth to be known.
They don't. They don't want. They hate it. After looking into it, understanding what Islam actually teaches and where those numbers are found, I put it into perspective again. Because, again, the Quran teaches that there is an age of maturity, ultimately. And I fully agree with that. If you have a scientific, atheistic mind, you're basing your worldview on Darwinism, how can you disagree with this? It's completely impossible. Religiously speaking, we say that any type of sexual encounters outside of marriage are prohibited because they lead to the degeneration of the humans, the society, right? The traumatization of women. Sex belongs into a marriage. And therefore, instead of opening up this essentially playground where teenagers get drunk and lose their virginity on a party, why not get them married?
So it's like, if it's okay, why does nobody want their daughter to do it? Which you have the right, but like, if it's okay, why is that not normal then?
It is not, you have to marry now a 6-year-old girl. You have to do this, otherwise you're not a Muslim. Or you have to agree even that she was 6 years old. You don't have to agree because even scholars are disagreeing on that. This does not define Tawheed. It does not define monotheism. So I see this as a distraction tactic, to be totally honest.
I want to become the best version of myself and do what's right. I'm not going to smoke any marijuana for the next year and see, do a test, see, does my life improve?
It's actually better to stop when you're still enjoying it, because I personally kept on smoking so much that I got psychotic in the end. Okay, brother, it was good talking to you. May Allah guide us all.
Thank you so much, Bobby.
Until next time.
It's Grayson here. I have a message for you, and the message will be different based on the fact if you're fat or if you're not fat. Anyways, I'm Grayson Brock, a 21-year-old kid from Texas. I'm just like you, except one day I stopped smiling and I said, you know what? I'm going to change my life for the better. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And I continue to wake up on the wrong side of the bed every single day because I'm that guy that was in the chat. Anyways, if you'd like to directly support free speech and the continued documentation of my life, you can click the first link below and purchase me a coffee. And if you're fat, use that money to get a personal trainer instead. Don't click the first link below if you're fat. W's in the chat.